Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Sean Renzo Head, and today I have another special guest, Gunnar Jinmei Linder. He's a Shakuhachi master, and he was very, very lucky, and I'm super, super jealous to study with the living national treasure, Yamaguchi Goro, whose sound absolutely warms my soul every single time I get to hear it on YouTube. I can only imagine what it was like to hear it live. Gunnar, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the YouTube channel.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So I want to start off really basic. I want to ask you, why Shakuhachi?
I just happened to run into Shakuhachi when I came to Japan as a backpacker in 1985, having been on the Trans-Siberian Railway for 14 days. I ended up in Tokyo. I met there was a place in Shibuya where they were teaching Shakuhachi and Koto and some Ikebana and Urushi, things like that, basically for free for foreigners. Basically, it was free for foreigners to go there. And I just ventured there together with a friend a person I just met who was studying the Koto there. And I came in and they were having a Shakuhachi lesson.
And then you were just struck.
I was sold, yeah.
Now, was this the Chikumeisha?
Yeah, it was kind of fun because it was the teacher there. He was like, at the time he was about 57, and he had started when he was around 50. He had been working really hard after the war, and he had always wanted to learn to study the Shakuhachi, but there was no time, no money. But then when he turned 50, he had the time and he had the money. So he started to play, and he had listened to a lot of recordings and concerts, and he really loved Yamaguchi Goro. So he was studying with a student of Yamaguchi Goro. And so I got a lot of information about concerts. I went to a lot of concerts, and then I ran into Christopher Yomei Blaisdell, and he introduced me to Yamaguchi Goro after 3-4 months of studying at this club. And then I got to take lessons with Yamaguchi Goro himself.
And so what was that like?
Difficult to describe. I mean, the sound is sitting right, you've heard his sound, and just sitting like a meter away from him, and you get like totally his sound passing your whole presence there. So it's like just fills the whole room, the whole space. So it was for me, I hadn't done music before, so for me to sit there was a very physical experience. I felt I was hearing the sound or sensing the sound, of course, with my ears, but also with my body. It was a very tactile feeling. I could feel it in my skin, so to speak. So it was a very physical experience to sit there. He had such a beautiful, wonderful sound. You get totally filled up with that.
It's I always like talking to my teachers about their teachers, and because those really, really great players have such an interesting persona. And before I went to Shakuhachi, I studied violin and viola, and there was a bunch of one of my viola teachers had a very, very famous viola professor back in the day, and to hear more of like the personal stories of how they acted on a day-to-day basis, you go, wow, really? Whoa. You never expect, because a lot of times you see them so refined on stage or whatever, but it is quite a treat to get to hear those people in person and hear just how amazing that sound is. And you go, okay, I understand now why they have that title, why he has Ningen Kokuho. It's yeah.
I mean, you could go to concerts, and I mean, where you had all the big masters of the time in the 90s, and they were all fabulous. And at the end, well, that was after Goro Sensei became Ningen Kokuho. He would always perform at the very end of the concert, but he was above the clouds. So it was a tremendous feeling in his playing, in his sound. It was kind of fun because when you had a lesson, he would always come into the room and sit down and just to greet you and ask you, what are we going to do today? And you had already put out the notation there. And then you played, and the way he was teaching was he would sing the score and clap the beats. and then you would play together with him once, and that was like the whole lesson. He hardly spoke. A lot of people say that it's like he was not teaching, wasn't no oral communication, so to speak. And at the end, he would say, "Oh, that's fine," and then goodbye, thank you, and you would leave the room. So it was really short, compact, and his teaching consisted of the solfege, the singing of the notation.
Mm.
And he would do that only once for you. So even later on, when you had passed through all the pieces, you could bring a piece back and play with him, but he would never sing it for you again. So what he did for teaching was he would divide the piece in 3 parts, whether it was 5 minutes or 25 minutes, it would still be in 3 parts. You did one part each week. And then the last time, the 4th time, we would just play the piece through together. He wouldn't sing it. He would just sing when we did it part by part.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 4th time, we would play together. And then you usually would say, "いいですね, very good."
Mm-hmm.
And then, you receive the pieces. So it means like, it's your piece. 磨き上げてください, which
Mm-hmm.
means like just polish it off. And I thought at that time, especially in the beginning, I thought like polish it off would be just like polish the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But the meaning was actually to study it, play it, perform it many times, go to concerts, listen to it. So it was like, you would still just get like the how do you say, the honegumi, the basic structure of the piece. I mean,
Yeah.
it was 1 month for one piece. So, but then he had, the whole repertoire, the basic repertoire consists of 72 sankyoku pieces and then 36 honkyoku pieces. So it's like 108 pieces. So that's 108 months if you could play once a month, and then sometimes he wasn't there, etc., etc. So it's just it's a big repertoire you have to go through. So if you cannot really take a year for a piece or something, but of course you wouldn't learn the piece in 1 month either. So you learn the
Yeah.
basics of that piece, and then you proceed to the next piece, and you will learn new things that you will then use when you repeat and practice the pieces you've done before.
Yeah, a lot of times when I think about Yamaguchi Goro and I think about what are my favorite recordings of his, they tend to be sankyoku pieces. Actually, the like
Mhm.
Yai Goromo is actually one of my absolute favorites of him. And there's his recording, and then there's Araki Koto Sanse that I really really like as well.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's to even say like, okay, I'm putting one of the best shakuhachi makers and players of all time with Yamaguchi Goro, it's like a non-compete it's just so great. And I think is I think part of it has to do one with the fact that the flutes are incredible as well. His Yamaguchi Shiro's flutes are just like wow. There's so much like I don't know if soul is the right word or if it's I have no idea, but it's just like this warmth. It's like a big giant bear hug of a sound, and I absolutely love it. I would love to get my hands on one of those flutes someday, but I'm not in the Chikumeisha, so I doubt that that's going to happen.
Oh, maybe we can find one anyway. I mean, there are brokers around who sell them, so might be possible.
For a pretty penny.
Yeah, it's yes.
And so, are you playing on a Shiro flute as well?
I'm not. My instrument was made by a guy from the Tohoku region,
Mm-hmm.
northeastern part. I think he lived in Sendai. His name is Iba Kinshu, and he is not a Chikumeisha guy, but he really liked the Shirokan.
Mm.
So my instrument looks very much like a Shirokan, and
Okay.
for me it sounds like one, but maybe not quite. But you know, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with the sound I get out of that flute. So
Yeah.
you make your own sound, and you kind of, I don't know how to say, but you are one with your sound in a way.
Mm.
Maybe I would sound differently if I play the Shirokan. Maybe not. I don't know. It's difficult
Mm.
to say. And to get used to a flute, to an instrument, any instrument, I would say would take a long time, especially with shakuhachi, because they're so very, very different, individual and different, right? So it takes a long time before you get one with your instrument, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been working with the same maker for now 3 or 4 years, and all of my flutes are from him. But I've played Kawasuke Junsuke flutes, Araki Koto Sansei, and Miura Kindle. I mean,
Mm.
I've run the full, here are the big name makers, and
Yeah,
I've played their flutes. And what I found that's really interesting is that it's kind of like different parts of my playing are
yeah.
highlighted by
Hmm.
different flutes.
Hmm.
So when I played my Yozan flutes, which is the maker that I use now, it's I can do pretty much whatever I want. They're very, very flexible, but it's not like there's in-depth things like, okay, I can access this sort of tone color because I need it in this sort of kinko piece or the koden piece. And then whereas like if I play a Junsuke flute, then I feel like, okay, I can access all those old school colors that I need, but
Hmm.
it's going to be a struggle to get some of those contemporary sounds that are necessary
Hmm.
as well. So I when I was talking to my maker, he actually told me, he's like, well, maybe you just need two sets of flutes. You have my set. Now you got to go collect all the old ones. And
Yeah.
I actually
Yes. Yeah,
yeah
the old flutes tend to have a slower response time, right? So
yeah
it's more
yeah
difficult to do contemporary stuff on those kind of flutes.
yeah. So
Um, yeah. Uh,
So actually, last week I just got back from Japan. Actually, I was doing some concerts there, and while I was there, I actually played a Araki Koto Sansei that was for sale, but it was broken. It has a crack in it, and they haven't fixed it yet. And the joint is a little bit the Nakatsuke joint is messed up. So I was looking at it and I was just really considering it because even though it was broken, you can still play the con register and get kind of an idea of where it's going to go. And
mm,
it has like that. What it really reminds me of is like Yokoyama Katsuya's sound. Like it's not direct. It's not like punch you in the face. It's
mhm,
the big round kind of
mm,
just this presence.
mm.
Same with Yamaguchi Goro. That's just round,
Yeah.
big, thick sound that you can't ignore.
Mhm.
But that's always is on my mind. But God, those flutes get so expensive. Yeah, like $30,000, and it's just like, God, that's more than my car.
Mm.
hmm
Yeah, that's
So,
the. Mm.
so after you studied, well, you continued to study with Yamaguchi Goro, but then you went off to Tokyo Gaidai and you got your master's degree there, correct? Or was that around this? That was the same time, correct? Of
No,
studying with.
I started with Yamaguchi Goro in 1985,
Mhm.
and I got to Gaidai as um, got a grant from the Japanese Ministry of Education, the MEXT, the
Oh,
uh,
the Ming.
Anbu Kagakusho,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, the grant for. So I'd already graduated from university, so I got like a research. It's a research grant, so
Mm.
it's for 2 years, and that was in '93. So at the time, I played then for 8 years, and I wasn't, not really sure I would be able to make it, as a performer professionally. So I tried to get into the Ongaku Gaku, the musicology department, to study with Kamisango Yuko,
Mm.
musicologist.
Mhm.
And I got some help from Chris Blaisdell there to introduce me to Kamisango Sensei. And I wrote the plan for what I wanted to do, to study more like the history of the shakuhachi. And so I came in '93 in April. I came happily to Gaidai, and I went to the office and said, I'm going to study here. And they said, yes, that's right. You're going to study shakuhachi. And I said, no, well, I'm going to study history. And they said, no, you're going to study shakuhachi. And I said, no, I'm going to study history. And so we were having that back and forth, back and forth. And then I realized that Yamaguchi Goro was the professor at Gaidai, and he had accepted me as his student
Mm.
without me knowing, because my name came up. Was to have this kind of, it's kind of like an auction on foreigners, foreign students coming to study something, and they have, here we have a Gunnar Linder from Sweden, anyone who wants him. And so when he heard my name, he didn't know that I was coming So, but when he heard his name, he said, "Well, he's studying with me, so I'll take care of him." So that's when I got into the conservatoire, the traditional music section or department. Um, and so I continued. I studied with him there. I studied also privately with him, and of course, we got a lot of chances to study with the string players at the university there.
So
Then
yeah,
after 2 years,
alongside the koto and
yeah,
shamisen.
yeah. After 2 years as a research student, I got into the master's program formally. So the first 2 years, you were kind of like a free agent, didn't have to do anything. Basically, just continue to do your own thing, whatever that was. I tried to follow what the Japanese students were doing, of course, a lot of this, the Benkyokai, the student concerts,
Mm-hmm.
and the courses, etc. But then I got in after 2 years. I got into the master's program. I got an extension of the grant, the scholarship, for 2 more years, and then I finished the in '97. I finished the master course.
Hmm.
Yes. So
So
at that time, I had the opportunity to study twice a week with Yamaguchi Goro, once at the university, once at his home. So it's a very
mhm.
intense study period.
Right next to the train track, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the house was shaking every time. And it was always like the Odakyu line, and so many trains coming both ways. So, and it was always, the whole house was shaking when the trains went past.
That's so funny.
Mm.
Yeah, it's there's I've been to I do my best to meet as many people as possible because I'm such an extroverted person and I love talking. If I'm by myself for too long, I get like stir crazy and anxiety ridden. But when I get to go to all these different people's homes in Japan where they're shakuhachi masters, and it's so interesting that some of them they do live right next to a train track and they're playing, and it's almost like as if they incorporate the timing of the train with their playing, and it was really interesting. So there's one guy, I'll leave his name out. Um, he started playing a piece for me, and during all the rest, right when he was going to hit like that moment of okay, here's my breath before I'm going to play the next phrase, a train would come,
Uh-huh.
and then he'd wait, and then when it passed, then he'd continue. But the train never came when he was playing a phrase, only when he stopped a phrase. It was like the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I was asking him about it. I'm like, hey, I noticed in the performance that you played, which was beautiful, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, a train never came during when you were actually making sounds. He goes,
Mhm.
yeah. I've kind of timed it out that way.
You probably know exactly the timetable. So.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, okay, in about 35 seconds, this line is going to come through and it's going to shake the apartment. I'm going to stop right there. So, but yeah, it's very, very interesting, all that kind of stuff.
A
So
lot of
what,
people. Yeah.
and
Sorry.
so yeah, what do you do now? What is your the main thing that you're doing with Shakuhachi? Because you have so many papers out, which I'm look or see, you have the dissertation and you also have a variety of writings that you're still doing, from what
Mhm.
I'm viewing on your website and stuff like that, which I'll
Mhm.
leave in the description of this video.
Yeah.
Um, what so what are the main things that you're doing?
Well, Shakuhachi related part. I mean, playing activities is. I have more students outside of Sweden than in Sweden.
Hmm.
I have a really good group now in France. We just started the Chikumeisha France lesson center last
Hmm.
year, and sometimes my students from Greece or Switzerland, Finland, etc. People will come to France to join in the workshops. But I go to Paris, to France. We are not always in Paris. We're sometimes on different locations in France, but that's at least twice a year. This year will be 3 times. I've been there twice already, and now in November is the third time.
Hmm.
And I have students. I do a lot of Skype teaching,
Hmm.
and then I have a few students here in Stockholm, in Sweden. So that's and then workshops. There's usually performances. I'm going to do a performance next week in Sweden. So it drops in every now and then. Writing wise, I'm having well, basically 3 projects at the moment. The first one is to complete the second volume of my Honkyoku playing techniques, the Kinkoryu Honkyoku playing technique. The first one had like 10 pieces with detailed explanations, as you might know.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one contains 13 pieces, 13 Kinkoryu Honkyoku, with explanations and recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So I have all the recordings. I have most of the writing done. My wife is doing the calligraphy for the notation, and so we have to finish that. And then I have a few more things to write on the explanations.
Mm.
So that's one, and the other one is actually relating more to Sankyoku, the ensemble music of the Edo period, with
Mm-hmm.
Shakuhachi, Koto, and shamisen. I'm trying to write something clever about the song texts, not like translating all of them, but to try to give some background to that genre of music and what position it had in. So there is a problem because a lot of the song texts relate to the yujo, the courtesans of the entertainment quarters,
Yeah.
which is kind of, in today's terminology, that would be prostitution. It could even be regarded as trafficking, because they had these young girls from the countryside that were sold to these houses,
Yeah.
the tea houses.
Karayuki-san, right?
Yeah. And so, but the song texts that relate to these women are actually, in my interpretation, love songs, like pure love, kind of. And if you look at the theater, the popular theater of the time, you can say that the relationships between ordinary townspeople and the courtesans, that's where a lot of the passionate love affairs occurred. You have all these double suicide or love double suicides, where two lovers who cannot get married, they cannot get each other, they commit suicide together in order to be reborn in the next life closer to each other in the same social setting.
Yeah.
Which kind of shows the passion in these love affairs. So the songs, I would like to regard them as love, and try to give some explanation to that, the cultural setting, the society. I'm back now in the early 16th century, where you have also like similar but short, so-called kuta, the short, very short songs that are love songs. And those songs were sung, there was love affairs between like ordinary people. They were not courtesans or
Mm-hmm.
very simple songs like I do not want to dream about you during the night, because then I will feel so much more lonely when I wake up without you.
Mm-hmm.
This kind
This
of
sort of stuff.
very
Yeah.
straightforward love songs.
Mm-hmm.
But these love songs from well, they go back probably to the 15th century or even before that, influenced the shamisen music a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And in the shamisen kumyuta, which is kind of the honkyoku for the shamisen musicians, they picked up some of these songs, like 200 years later, they put them down in writing and they have a shamisen line to it. So there's a strong influence from these simple love songs from the 16th or even 15th centuries. So that's what I'm trying to go back to a little bit, to see how that has developed from popular music, popular songs, into some more art music in the Edo period.
Yeah.
So that's one.
And that's always really interesting for me too, because it's like a Qin music from China, and a lot of times, like when people hear it, they're like, wow, this is so like ethereal, and I feel like I'm being raised to the heavens. And then someone says, oh yeah, this piece is about getting, shit-faced drunk and falling over in the side of the road. And everybody goes, what?
Yeah.
It's the same thing like with opera too. I remember I took my mom to an opera, I think it was Quasi fan tutte,
Yeah,
and my mom was like, "God, this section is so beautiful." I'm like, "Mom, she's being raped. Like, this is not a good. This
yeah.
is not a good section of music to say that." So, there's a lot of that cognitive dissonance between what the sounds are actually, whatever, and then the meaning of the piece itself.
Yeah.
But
Well, così fan tutte means like everyone's doing it. So everyone's having their little side affairs, right? So which
yeah,
is
yeah.
really, I mean, nothing
It's
you
or
should
like
promote, maybe.
Yeah, and
You
the
know.
other translation that is constantly used for that one is it's just the way women are. And like today, if you like say something like that, I mean, you have YouTube police coming down after you for that. Um, you know the other thing is that it's interesting that you're going to do Japanese sexuality, because that's a really interesting historical
Mhm.
perspective that many people don't know a lot about, especially the relationship of the samurai, where samurais, actually many of them were bisexual. They had women, and they also were sleeping with their fellow samurai as well, and they actually preferred the relationship with the men, that according to writing. So this is like a place that's actually really really fascinating, in general, because there's not many other communities where that I'm thinking about in history that are so open
Mhm.
to sex in the
Yes.
ways that the Japanese were. And even when we go back further, Sengoku Jidai and especially the Heian Jidai, I mean, it wasn't uncommon to have 10 partners. And
No.
yeah.
And it was very free for men or women. I mean, women were choosing their partners. Uh, uh, I'm thinking of the no drama Kaioi Komachi, which is about Ono Komachi, who was a very famous historical figure, a woman who was very witty, very sensual, very charming. She had everything,
Hmm.
and she had so many lovers.
Yeah.
But this no play is about how one famous general is trying to become her lover, and she tells him, "You have to come and visit me 100 nights in a row." And he has to do it in the night because he's not supposed to be seen. And he comes there every night, and he puts a mark in a shackle or something. And on the 99th night, of course, he dies. The no
Mm.
play is about their spirits who are like
Spoiler
disgusting.
alert.
I mean, you have this. This is like acquired in order to enjoy it. But the point there is that in this, as a spirit, in their souls, they're meeting, and he's telling her his hardships and, oh, I love you so, and I wish I could have done it one more. Come like 100 nights, I would never have let you in. So
Mm, mm,
she was just tricking him, just trying to get rid of him, basically. So it was quite free both for men and women to have affairs and have
mhm.
several partners.
Yeah.
And bisexuality, as you said, it was probably more norm than unusual.
Mhm.
Most, especially male bisexuality. We would know much less about female bisexuality, but probably that was also quite prevalent. But
Yeah,
anyway, that's it's an interesting time, and to also promote a little bit that kind of music, because it's more not so easily accessible. The honkyoko, the shakuhachi, it's instrumental music, but when you have the song and you need to know a little bit what the song is about, if you translate it word by word, it doesn't really make much sense, right? And there's so
yeah.
many allusions in the song text that you have this song, this piece, Aki no Niwa, Niwa no Aki, which sings about the herbs that you can find in the garden in autumn, in
Mhm.
fall, but they all have connotations to sex and love, and
Yeah.
so extremely
And
difficult to translate.
And I also think that even if a lot of Japanese people, if they were going to listen to these songs, hearing the words, I doubt that very many people would understand it, because they're using Yamato kotoba. So, for example, for people who don't know what that is, the word for enjoyment is tanoshi,
Mm.
but the Yamato kotoba version of that is tanoshu de gozaru.
Mhm.
Completely different,
Mhm.
and the only thing that's the same is the first two character, like the first two sounds. And
Mhm.
but for a Japanese person to hear Tanoshi de Gozaru, they'd have no idea what that means. It's like completely It'd be like speaking old English, where you're not saying friend, but you're saying Frande. And they're like, well, this person's speaking German now. No. This is old English. And it is that way. And if you've never heard old English before, look up on YouTube old English and see how much you can understand.
Yeah.
It's like zero.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's a difficult, it's a different language. And also when you hear it sang, it's like the vowel sounds are often pulled out. So word that ends with u or an ah or something, and they take a breath and then they continue with that vowel sound.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to hear where actually the words are, because again, you have to know the story to be able to maybe enjoy it. So it requires, I think, more background knowledge
Yeah.
in order to appreciate it. The third project I have, which I haven't really started on yet, but that is to translate the Kinko Techo, which is probably written by the third Kurosawa Kinko, about their pieces, about the origin of the pieces, and all kinds of things. So it's, I think it would be interesting to have that translated into English.
That's, that I would definitely want to read too. That sounds really fascinating. Yeah, that really would be cool to read. But can you move that one up so I can read it?
Sure. No, I think these other two projects are like more time consuming. So the Kinko Techo could be maybe translated fairly quickly.
That's actually, I don't do translation work. I usually do interpreting in Japan. The shokunin that I work for, there's a lot of times that there's foreigners that will come in to buy flutes, and he needs someone to interpret. So it's much more rapid fire, and it's not detailed oriented. You just have to get the gist of everything. But with moving from, especially old Japanese, you said it's Kinko Kurosawa the third?
Yes,
The
probably.
third? So that would be what? That's 1800s?
Yeah, early 1800s.
Okay, so the Japanese is still fairly modern, but the problem still remains that Japanese and English are such like they're so different. Where Japanese, one of the things that Japanese does that I've recently come to sort of figure out, and correct me if I'm wrong, they like to summarize with one noun. So whereas English, we like to say da 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 and da 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 da, Japanese goes, here's this one word that says everything, but you only know what that one word means if you're Japanese, because there's a lot of historical context that goes along with this word that I'm saying at this moment.
Oh yeah, it's not untrue. Definitely. I mean,
now 100% of the time, no. But
well, it has to also, I think, cultural aspects to it, that generally you allow more things to be unsaid or put into words in Japanese than you would normally allow for in Western cultures. If we count Western, it's a big part of the world, but the Western world tends to be more wordy, that we need to specify everything with a word to be sure. This is a little bit, maybe, I don't know, German philosophy, and I don't know, but it's like to be very precise. I'm thinking about Immanuel Kant or something, but
that's so funny, because I was thinking the same person. I was literally thinking Kant, and I was like, yeah, Kant usually goes on forever, or like Heidegger. I'm like thinking of how their writing is. It's just, I think it's like this deepness of like,
preciseness, I would say.
Yeah, preciseness. That's a much better word. Yeah.
And in Japanese, you allow for those kind of connotations to hang there, allusions and connotations that you understand if you know the context. And that's why, for example, this I said, to write about the ensemble music where you have these song texts. If you don't see how the words in the song, how it relates to other things, it's very difficult to understand what's actually being said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's very often you would have to make a choice of when you translate a poem or something. You often have to make a choice when you put it into English, for example. Either you translate it as this or as that, but both meanings are like kind of included. So if you don't want to fill a translation with footnotes, you often will have to make that kind of choice. But in my writing, which is tend to be more academic, I would like to rather explain these kind of things in order to, promote a deeper understanding of what is being said, so to speak.
Hmm.
This is true, as you say. I mean, often you use one word which kind of implies different meanings. And in poetry and also in the song text, it's used as a poetic tool because one word can allude to 2-3 different other poems. So if you understand those links, you get a much wider and deeper emotional impact, maybe, of just this one little word, because you
Hmm.
understand how it relates to other things. So you get suddenly a wider scope. You get a wide scope from a very narrow keyhole and look at something like this, and then suddenly it just like woof, and you get a lot of how to say, it implies many different things.
I was really impressed by Tyler Royal's translation of the Tale of Genji, and how, because I have a modern Japanese translation and I have his translation of it, and I was always so impressed with how he was able to take such a short sentence, but then almost Victorianize the language to make it that really fluffy, vibrant, flamboyant sound that, like, that it's kind of written in sort of a Japanese sense. So it's like that's a whole nother art form in its own. And
Yes.
um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So what about things outside of shakuhachi that you do that are related or are not related to Japan that you enjoy?
Well, most of what I do relates to Japan because I'm also working as associate professor at Stockholm University, and that is in Japanese studies. So
Mm-hmm.
I teach both language and history, and next semester I'm going to have a course on traditional stage arts like No, Kabuki, and Bunraku, and of course some Sankyoku performance and Jutamai, Nihon Buyo, these kind of things. So, I mean, at that the department we also have Chinese, Korean, and Middle Eastern studies,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also working, administrative position for the whole department. But most of my time anyway goes into Japanese studies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And I am registered as associate professor of Shakuhachi at the Royal Music College here in Stockholm. It's not so often that students take up the Shakuhachi there, but
Yeah.
it happens every now and then. So I have that kind of on a like part-time basis when there are students who use that as a second instrument or something.
Mm.
But my daily work is at the university, so most of my time I spend with somehow related to Japan.
Mm.
Mm.
Cool. So
Yeah,
if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
well, they can of course look at my homepage, which is shakuhachi.bz, and my Facebook page, of course, which I don't know how to get it, but you probably can find it and include it.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
And that we also have this Facebook activities in France, especially because they started up a Chikumeisha France Facebook page.
Mm.
So if you want to see my activities there in France, especially.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I think I have all the links. If you can also just send them to me later, I'll put them in there. That's no
yeah,
problem.
sure.
And yeah,
I'm
well,
also trying to I've been very slow in working on my YouTube, as I have some video clips or sound clips that I try to put images to, and I'm very poor at that. So
Hmm.
it's not so much to look. The last one I put up was a recording of Koro Sugagaki, I think, and I just put some pictures of myself in there. It's kind of, well, I don't need that. But it would be nice to have some beautiful video or something, but I'm not very good at those kind of things. So
No, I mean, like, I mean, I do the YouTube thing, of course, as like obviously, but it's for me, I'm not really good at video editing or anything like that.
mhm,
A lot of times it's just very straightforward camera, mic, me,
mhm,
talk. And
mhm,
other times, videos are from, other people that took them. And,
mhm.
but, that's a whole nother, again, that's an art form. Video is
Yeah,
no
yeah.
joke. It's very difficult. And, the angle tells a whole story.
Mhm.
So,
Have you looked at my book about the Kinkuryu Honkyoku? Have you seen that?
what's the title of it?
Uh, Kinkuryu Honkyoku explanations, something.
Is this the recent one that you just released? Not long
I
ago, maybe
know
like.
that 6 years, 7 years ago, something. Explanations of Kinkuryu Honkyoku.
Let me look that up. Explanations of
It's on
Kinko.
my homepage on under writings. At the
Okay.
moment, it's sold by Monty Levinson, Shakuhachi.com. He's selling it. I was just wondering if you've seen it, what you think about it, because it's a very detailed explanation of each individual phrase of in the first book, then 10 Honkyoku pieces. And
Yeah. I'm looking at it now. I think I haven't purchased it and read through it.
mhm,
But I've seen the book and I've read like the your chapter explanations and stuff.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I'd be interested in looking through it. See, the only thing that's different though is that because the school that I'm from is the Taniguchi lineage, is that we
it's
kind
quite
of
good.
we it's interesting, and maybe this could be our final point of departure, is the Chikushinkai and the Chikumeisha are both called Kinko-ryu. Like on my Shihan and on my teacher's Shinsen Kutsudai Shihan, it says Kinko-ryu. All and so, however, when I play concerts in Japan and I'm talking to people and I say that I have a Shihan from Kinkoryu, but I really don't play Kinkoryu. We if you hear Yokoyama play and you hear him play Hifumi Hachigaishi or any Kinkoryu piece, any Kinko player would go, yeah, this is really great, but it's
Mhm.
not Kinkoryu.
No, yeah, it's an interesting point because the different styles uh, has a lot to do with sound production and ornamentation. Of course, phrasing is also involved. One interesting point is how far can you go from the standard way of playing it, and it stops being Kinkoryu or Chikushinkai or whatever do you, even Tozan Ryu, and you have three different schools in Tozan Ryu with slight different interpretations. So
Mm-hmm.
where is the limit? How far can you go from a certain pattern? For example, in Chikumeisha or Yamaguchi Goro's playing like tsu tsu re, how far can you go move away from that pattern and still say I'm playing Yamaguchi Goro style or Chikumeisha or Kinkoryu?
Yeah.
That's, I think, a very interesting question. I don't think it has a definite answer. Um, so it's kind of to leave that open to the interpreter, which is some teachers. Yamaguchi Goro was very open in how you interpret things, which was a great thing. He said that if it's bad, if it's good, it cannot be bad,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So if the audience enjoys it, the people enjoy the way you play, it's not a bad way of playing.
Mm-hmm.
Some teachers tend to be very strict where you have to play my way or no way.
Yeah.
Where Yamaguchi Goro is very open in a possibility of changing an interpretation of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, what is the style? If you need a style, maybe you don't need a style to play shakuhachi. I don't think you need a style. A style
Mm-hmm.
is something you use, and you tend to follow, even if you are standing on your own feet, so to speak, as a performer. You tend to be heavily influenced by your teacher's way of playing, which is a natural way of things, right? It's
Yeah.
not so strange. But you will play differently from your teacher. There is no such thing as static
Yeah.
tradition. Like
Hmm.
tradition tends to be something static, never changing, but music always changes from one person to the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a very interesting but very open-ended kind of issue.
Yes. I played for Ralph Samuelson, who I'm guessing is you studied alongside with or have at least crossed paths.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and I told him I wanted to play a Kinko piece for him. I wanted to play Hifumi Hachigaishi. And after I finished playing for him, he just said he didn't say anything about like the playing. He said, "Yo, it's really great playing. You brought me back to when I first met Katsuya Yokoyama." And
Mm-hmm.
that's because he said I played that piece for Yokoyama Sensei, and
Mm-hmm.
then afterwards, he had all of his students there. It was kind of like a master class, and then he played it, and he's like, "That is just like split image, same sort of like fingering styles, same sort of the way that you do our attaris and everything." So it's interesting that he's able to recognize right away this is Chikushinkai style playing
Mm-hmm.
or Watazumi do, whatever. I know that Kato Yokoyama hated the word dokyoku, but
Okay.
um, this it's still, even though I don't do everything the same way, they're like people know. Okay, yeah, that's the Watazumi do lineage sort of style of playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it is very fascinating to me, and I I still do things that are Kinko style that I go like, yeah, I love the way that this phrase is being interpreted by Kinko players
Mm-hmm.
more so than I do the Chikushinkai way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that, and I think that's what makes Shakuhachi so interesting too, is that you have a variety of players. Like there's a video of Yokoyama Katsuya and Aoki Reibo playing Shika no Tone, which
Mm-hmm.
many of the great masters did that together. They all played Shika no Tone, and listening to them play, they are such different players, and you don't realize how different they are until you put them on stage together playing, and then you go, wow, like it's like they're night and day. They're exact opposites in terms of style.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is quite a lot of Renkan recordings. There is one also with Akita Sugagaki with Aoki Reibo and Yamaguchi Goro, which is same thing there. Very different in like the accent, the interpretation, like the pronunciation, some,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But that's kind of interesting. That same Kinko, there are similarities, but there are also differences. If you do, for example, Shikanotone, sometimes it's very nice to do it with. I did it in Paris with Mizuno Komei last month, and it's very nice because you know exactly what's going to happen, and you can be so really tight together.
Mm-hmm.
I did it in Barcelona with Kakizakai Kaoru-san, and the Chikushinkai way. And that's also very fascinating. It's very interesting because it's so different. You get so different interpretation, and that kind of gives a different dynamic to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you do with a Chikumeisha person, we have similar sounds, similar sound production, similar interpretation of the phrases. It feels like two deer that are very good friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you play it with, for example, Ikaki Zakai-san or someone else, you still get some kind of tension in there that you don't have when you are playing with Chikumeisha people.
Mm-hmm.
Or the same, doesn't have to be two Chikumeisha, but two people from the same style, the same lineage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kaki Sakai-san has like an absolutely massive sound too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a really, really big sound. So he's a buck for sure.
Yeah, well, bisexuality.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out and chatting for a while.
Thanks
So
for
this,
having me. Yeah,
yeah. So hopefully we'll get a chance to meet in person, and maybe we can play Shiko no Tone together.
that would be nice.
All right. So thank
Okay.
you everybody for watching. As usual, every Friday we'll have another interview. So stay tuned next week. I don't even know who it's going to be next week, so it'll be fun to see where that leads us.